I was sitting on the narrow balcony outside my apartment in Boise, Idaho, staring at my phone like it might suddenly tell me I'd made a mistake. My bank app still showed the transfer confirmation, $12,500 sent. My stomach twisted the way it always did after sending money I couldn't really afford to lose. The early morning air smelled like rain and car exhaust from the street below, but my coffee had already gone cold in my hands. That money had taken me almost 2 years to save. Extra shifts, canceled vacations, living off frozen dinners and store-brand cereal. And now it was gone in less than 30 seconds, sent straight to my parents. Because, according to my mother, they were about to lose the family farm. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're watching from today. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. Anyway, my name is Danielle Harper, but everyone calls me Dani. I'm 29 years old, and I work as a physical therapy assistant at a rehabilitation clinic here in Boise. It's not glamorous work, but I love it. Helping people walk again after surgery or injury gives my days a sense of purpose. Still, the pay isn't exactly amazing, which is why sending that money hurts so much. But when your mom calls you crying at midnight saying the bank is threatening foreclosure on the land your family has owned for 3 generations, you don't exactly sit around calculating interest rates. You help. Or at least, you try to. My phone had rung at 11:42 p.m. the night before. I almost didn't answer because I had to be up early for work. But when I saw Mom on the screen, something told me I needed to pick up. "Dani," she sniffled. Her voice sounded thick and shaky, like she'd been crying for a while. "Mom, what's wrong?" "It's the farm." Just those 3 words were enough to make my chest tighten. I grew up on that farm outside Pendleton, Oregon. 100 acres of wheat fields, an old red barn, and the farmhouse my grandfather built in the 1970s. It was the kind of place where summer mornings smelled like hay and diesel, and winter nights meant hot cocoa by the fireplace. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. "The bank says we're behind again," Mom said. Again. That word stuck out. "Behind how much?" I asked. She hesitated. "About 12,000. I leaned back in my chair. That number felt like a punch. "Dad told me things were under control," I said. "Well, your father didn't want to worry you," she said quickly. "But the crop prices dropped again this year, and the tractor needed repairs, and—" Her voice cracked again. "They're threatening foreclosure if we don't make a payment by Friday." Friday. 3 days away. I rubbed my forehead. I knew my parents struggled sometimes, but they had always figured things out. At least that's what they told me. "Does Caleb know?" I asked. There was a pause. A long one. Then Mom sighed. "You know how your brother is." Yes. Yes, I did. My brother Caleb Harper was 32, 3 years older than me, and according to my parents, the smartest man alive, or at least, that's how they talked about him. Caleb had what my dad called entrepreneurial spirit, which was a polite way of saying he had a new get-rich scheme every 6 months. Over the years, he'd tried Amazon reselling, a drone photography business, day trading stocks, a revolutionary beef jerky brand, cryptocurrency mining. None of them lasted. None of them made money, but somehow Caleb always had the newest iPhone, always had expensive sneakers, and somehow always had my parents defending him. "He's figuring things out," Mom used to say. Meanwhile, I was the one who got told to be practical. Stay close to home, don't take risks, don't make waves. Which is exactly what I did. I worked, I saved, I helped. After the call with my mom, I barely slept. I kept thinking about the farm, the barn where Dad taught me to ride a horse, the kitchen table where Mom made pancakes every Sunday morning, the giant oak tree in the yard where Caleb and I used to hang tire swings. I couldn't imagine strangers living there. So the next morning, before leaving for work, I opened my banking app. My savings account stared back at me. $18,400. Almost everything I had saved for a down payment on a house. My finger hovered over the transfer button. I told myself it was temporary. My parents would get back on their feet. Maybe the next harvest would be better. Maybe Dad would sell a piece of equipment. Maybe Caleb would finally help. Right. I almost laughed at that thought, but family is family. So I entered the amount, $12,500 account number, routing number. Confirm. The money disappeared instantly. My chest felt hollow, but I told myself it was the right thing to do. Mom called later that afternoon. Her voice sounded lighter, almost cheerful. Oh, Dani, sweetheart, you have no idea how much this means to us. Did the bank accept the payment? I asked. Of course, she said quickly. Everything's taken care of now. That should have made me feel relieved. But something about her tone felt strange. Too bright, too rehearsed. Still, I pushed the thought aside. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I was paranoid. You always come through, Mom said softly. That sentence stuck with me after we hung up, because she didn't say thank you. She said you always come through, like it was expected. 3 days later, I called again, just to check. Hey, Mom, do you think you could send me the payment receipt? I asked casually. For my records. There was a pause. Oh, honey, we already shredded it. My eyebrows knit together. You shredded it? Yes. Well, your father cleans out paperwork all the time. That seemed odd. Banks usually provide digital confirmations. But again, I tried not to overthink it. My parents weren't exactly tech-savvy. Still, something nagged at the back of my mind. Like a loose thread I couldn't quite pull. The truth came 5 days later. I was sitting in the break room at work, scrolling through Instagram while eating a sad little microwave burrito, just killing time between patients. Then a familiar name popped up, Caleb Harper. New story, I almost skipped it. But curiosity got the better of me. The video started with loud music and flashing neon lights. Caleb's face filled the screen, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Welcome to Imai, babby! My fork froze halfway to my mouth. The camera spun around. A luxury hotel suite, champagne bottles, a group of people laughing around a poker table. Then Caleb raised a glass. Big thanks to the family fund for making this weekend happen. My stomach dropped. Family fund? Then he laughed. Nothing like turning a little support into a big crypto celebration. The room behind him erupted in cheers. Someone shouted, "To Caleb!" Another voice yelled, "Best investor ever!" My heart started pounding. No. No way. I replayed the video. Once, twice, 3 times. Each time, my chest felt tighter, because there was only one family fund I knew about, the one I had sent 5 days ago. $12,500. For the farm, for the mortgage, for my parents. My hands started shaking. I opened my contacts and dialed my mother. She answered on the second ring. Hi, sweetheart. Did you give Caleb my money? Silence. Not confusion, not shock, just silence. And that was when I knew. Everything I thought I understood about my family was about to fall apart. The silence on the phone stretched so long I could hear my own heartbeat. Mom, I said again, slower this time. Did you give Caleb my money? She exhaled like someone caught in a lie they didn't want to admit. Dani, it's not what you think. That sentence? I swear every terrible truth in the world begins with those 5 words. Then explain it to me, I said. Another pause. Then she said something that made my stomach twist. He was going through a really hard time. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. A hard time? I repeated. Yes, she said quickly. Like the faster she talked, the less ridiculous it would sound. You know how sensitive Caleb is. The market hasn't been good to him lately, and he's been really stressed. My hand tightened around my phone. So, your solution, I said slowly, was to give him $12,000 that I sent for the mortgage, so he could go party in Miami. He didn't party, Mom snapped defensively. I blinked. I literally just watched a video of him popping champagne in a penthouse suite. Well, you know how social media exaggerates things. My chest started burning. Mom, did the bank even get a payment? She didn't answer, and that silence told me everything. You lied to me, I whispered. No, you told me the farm was about to be foreclosed. Well, it could have been if things kept going the way they were. So instead of paying the bank, you gave the money to Caleb. She sighed loudly. We thought maybe he could turn it around. I felt like the room tilted sideways. Turn it around. He's very good with investments, she insisted. I actually laughed, not a happy laugh. The kind that escapes when something is so absurd your brain refuses to process it. Mom? Caleb's last investment was a dog treat subscription box that went bankrupt in 4 months. That was different. How? He had bad partners. I rubbed my forehead. Let me get this straight. You took my savings, the money I worked 2 years to save, and gave it to Caleb so he could gamble it on crypto and casinos? Dani, you're being dramatic. That word, dramatic, I had heard it my entire life. Whenever I asked for fairness, whenever I questioned Caleb's behavior, whenever I pointed out something that didn't make sense, you always act like you're some kind of victim, Mom continued. My throat tightened. I'm not acting like a victim, I said quietly. I am the victim. Oh, please, she scoffed. It's just money. Just money. I stared out my apartment window, watching cars pass below like tiny toy models. Mom? That was my house fund. Well, you're young, she said dismissively. You'll make more. Something inside me snapped. But Caleb won't. He's trying his best. My voice dropped to a whisper. So am I. For the first time since the call started, my mom didn't respond. Finally, she said, softer this time. You're his sister, Dani. Family helps each other. I felt a lump form in my throat. You didn't ask me. We knew you'd say no. Exactly, because I wasn't stupid. After I hung up, I watched Caleb's story again. And this time, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. At the end of the clip, Caleb leaned close to the camera and slurred slightly. Shout at my little sister Dani for the startup capital. The people behind him burst out laughing. One guy yelled, best sister ever. Another voice shouted, family funding. Then Caleb raised his drink. To dumb money. The room exploded in cheers. My stomach dropped. I felt physically sick. I had skipped meals to save that money. I had taken extra shifts while my coworkers called out. I had driven a 12-year-old car with a broken heater through 2 winters. And my brother was using it as a punchline. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying moments from my childhood. Mom telling me not to brag when I brought home straight A's. Dad saying I should stay close to home for college so Caleb wouldn't feel left behind. The time Caleb wrecked my bike, and my parents told me to be understanding. Back then, I thought that was just how families worked. One kid was the responsible one. The other was the free spirit. But now, it looked a lot different. Now, it looked like a pattern. The next afternoon, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in months. Caleb. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. Hello? Dani, he shouted. The sound of music thumped in the background. My jaw tightened. Where are you? Pool party. Of course he was. Caleb, did you seriously use my money for this trip? He laughed. Oh, relax. It's not like I lost it. You didn't? Well, not all of it. My stomach sank. How much is left? He hesitated, then said casually, like $2,000. I felt the air leave my lungs. You spent $10,000 in 5 days? Invested, he corrected. On what? Crypto, poker, bottle service, networking? Yeah, he said enthusiastically. You gotta spend money to make money. My hand started shaking again. That was my life savings. You'll make more, he said, echoing Mom's exact words. I closed my eyes. You humiliated me online. Oh, come on, Dani, it was a joke. You called me dumb money. There was a pause. Well, technically you were. That did it. The anger that had been building all week finally erupted. You're 32 years old and living off our parents. That's temporary. You've been temporary for 10 years. Jealousy isn't a good look on you. I actually laughed again. You know what, Caleb? What? Enjoy Miami. Oh, I will, because when you get back, things are going to be different. He snorted. What are you gonna do? Send me a strongly worded email? I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I didn't know yet. But something inside me had shifted. For the first time in my life, I wasn't thinking about fixing things. I was thinking about walking away. I didn't call my parents again. Not once. I ignored every text, every voicemail, even Caleb's drunk messages. Instead, I focused on something else. My future. For years, I had been saving for a small house. Nothing fancy. Just a place of my own. But after what happened, my plan changed. If my family saw me as their emergency ATM, Then maybe it was time to invest in something that would finally belong to me. That's when I emailed a real estate agent. Her name was Samantha Rhodes, and meeting her would end up setting off a chain of events my parents never saw coming. Because while they thought they'd gotten away with using me one more time, they had no idea they had just pushed me into making the best decision of my life. And the moment my brother finally came home from Miami, everything started to unravel. For 3 weeks, I didn't speak to my parents. Not once. No calls. No texts. No explanations. At first, it felt strange. My mom used to call at least twice a week, even if it was just to complain about the weather or tell me Caleb had another big opportunity coming. But after the Miami video, something inside me had gone quiet. Not angry, not even sad. Just done. Instead of obsessing over what they'd done, I threw myself into work. Extra shifts, more patience, longer hours, anything that kept my mind busy. But the real change started the day I met Samantha Rhodes. Samantha and I met at a small coffee shop near downtown Boise. She walked in wearing a navy blazer, holding a tablet and a folder stuffed with paperwork. Confident, efficient, exactly the kind of person you want when making one of the biggest financial decisions of your life. "You must be Dani," she said, offering a handshake. "That obvious," she smiled. "You've got the 'I'm about to spend my entire savings' look." I laughed nervously. "Yeah, that sounds about right." We sat down and she got straight to the point. "So tell me what you're looking for." I hesitated. "A fresh start," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "That's a little abstract for Zillow filters." I smiled faintly. 2 bedrooms, small yard, quiet neighborhood. She nodded while typing on her tablet. "What's your budget?" I swallowed. "Well, it was bigger before last month." She looked up. "Before what happened last month?" I debated whether to explain. Then I shrugged. "Family drama." She leaned back in her chair. "You'd be surprised how many houses get bought because of family drama." "Really?" "All the time," she said. "Divorces, inheritance fights, parents pushing kids too hard." She paused, studying my face. "Let me guess. You're the responsible one in the family." I blinked. "How did you know?" "Because the responsible ones are always the ones sitting across from me with spreadsheets and savings accounts." She slid a list of properties toward me. "Let's find you something that belongs to you." We toured 6 houses that weekend. Most were fine, nice even, but none of them felt like mine. Until the last one. It was a small 2-bedroom cottage on the edge of town. White siding, green shutters, a little front porch with room for a swing. Nothing fancy, but the backyard opened up to a quiet stretch of trees and hills. When I stepped onto the porch, I felt something loosen in my chest. "This one," I said softly. Samantha smiled. "I thought you might say that." 2 days later, something unexpected happened. I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. "Hello? Dani?" The voice sounded familiar but distant. "Yes? This is Aunt Margaret." My eyes widened. My dad's older sister. She had moved to Colorado years ago after falling out with my parents. We hadn't spoken in nearly a decade. "Aunt Margaret?" I said, surprised. "Hi, sweetheart. I hope I'm not calling it a bad time." "No, not at all. I'm just surprised." She chuckled softly. "That's fair. I've been cleaning out some of your grandfather's old storage boxes." My heart skipped. "Grandpa. He passed away when I was 20. He was the one person in my family who never made me feel invisible. He used to call me the steady one." "What did you find?" I asked. "Well, a lot of old photos, letters, and school awards." She paused. "And something else." "What?" "A trust document." I frowned. "A trust?" "Yes," she said, "with your name on it." My stomach flipped. "What do you mean?" "Your grandfather set up a small investment fund for you years ago." I sat up straight. "I've never heard about this." "That's because he didn't trust your parents to tell you." Those words hit me like a brick. "He left instructions for me to contact you if the time ever felt right." "And why now?" She sighed gently. "Because your cousin mentioned something about family drama and money." My chest tightened. "What kind of investment fund?" Well, she said slowly, your grandfather invested early in a technology index fund back in 2008. I held my breath. And it's grown quite a bit. How much is quite a bit? There was a pause. Then she said, last time I checked, a little over $340,000. The room went completely silent. I actually thought she might be joking. 340,000? Yes, my legs felt weak. I sat down on the kitchen floor. How did I not know about this? He wanted it to be your safety net, she said softly. He told me, Danny's the one who'll need it someday. My throat tightened. Why would he say that? Because he knew your parents. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After we hung up, I sat there for nearly 20 minutes, just staring at the wall. $340,000. For years, I had believed I was barely staying afloat, scraping together savings, sacrificing everything to help my family. And all along, my grandfather had quietly given me a way out, a way to stand on my own. For the first time since the Miami video, I smiled, because suddenly, my parents' betrayal didn't feel like the end of something. It felt like the beginning. That same weekend, Caleb returned from Miami. I only knew because of his Instagram, a blurry photo of him back at the farm with the caption, "Home base, time to rebuild the empire." Empire. I rolled my eyes, but the real moment came 2 days later. I was walking through the grocery store after work when I turned the corner into the cereal aisle. And there they were, Mom, Dad, Caleb, all standing together like nothing had happened. The air felt colder instantly. Mom spotted me first. "Dani," she said brightly, like we were running into each other at a family barbecue. "Hi, Mom," I said calmly. Dad nodded stiffly. Caleb smirked. Well, if it isn't the investor. My grip tightened on my shopping basket. "Enjoy Miami?" I asked. He shrugged. "Could have been better." Mom stepped closer. "We've been trying to call you. I know. You can't just ignore your family." I looked at the three of them. The people I had spent my entire life trying to please, trying to support, trying to love. Then I said something none of them expected. I bought a house. They blinked in surprise. "You what?" Dad said. "Closed yesterday." Mom frowned. "Where?" I smiled slightly. "Just outside town." Caleb snorted. "Must be nice having money lying around." "Oh, don't worry," I said. "I'm done sharing it." And that was the moment their expressions changed. Because for the first time in my life, they realized something important. I wasn't playing my old role anymore. And they had no idea what I was about to do next. The moment I said I bought a house, the entire mood in the grocery store aisle shifted. Mom blinked at me like she'd misheard. "You bought a house?" she repeated. Dad frowned. "With what money?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I calmly picked up a box of cereal and placed it in my basket. Caleb leaned against the cart, arms crossed. "Let me guess," he said smugly. "Another loan from the Bank of Dani?" I looked at him. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel intimidated by my older brother. I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like I had to explain myself. "No," I said quietly. "Just good financial decisions." He rolled his eyes. "Sure." Mom stepped closer. "Dani, we need to talk about what happened." "Oh, now you want to talk?" Dad sighed heavily. "You've been acting very immature about this." Immature. The word made my chest tighten. But I kept my voice calm. "You mean the part where you lied to me about losing the farm?" Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. "We didn't lie. You told me the bank was going to foreclose. Well, things were tight, so instead of paying the bank, you gave the money to Caleb." Dad's voice hardened. "Watch your tone." I laughed softly. "My tone?" Caleb scoffed. "It's not like we stole from you." I stared at him. "You spent $10,000 of my savings in 5 days. "Relax," he said. "It was an investment." "On what?" he shrugged. "Networking." Mom nodded like that explanation made perfect sense. "You know Caleb has always had a talent for business." That was the moment something inside me went completely cold. "You're right. I said. He's incredibly talented. Caleb smirked. See? Finally, someone appreciates my hustle. Oh, I appreciate it, I said. In fact, I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I actually saved one of your business presentations. Mom frowned. What are you talking about? I tapped the screen, then turned the phone toward them. The video started playing. Caleb's face filled the screen, red and sweaty under flashing neon lights. Behind him, a luxury hotel suite buzzed with music and laughter. Welcome me to Mimi, baby. Mom's face immediately went pale. Dad muttered under his breath, "Turn that off." But I didn't. The video continued. Caleb raising his drink. Big thanks to the family fund for making this weekend happen. People cheering. Music blasting. Someone yelling, "Best investor ever." Then the part that made my stomach twist every time I saw it. Caleb leaning into the camera. Shout out to my little sister Dani for the start of capital. The crowd behind him exploded with laughter. To dumb money, someone shouted. Caleb lifted his glass again. To dumb money, the video ended. Silence filled the cereal aisle. Mom stared at the floor. Dad looked like he wanted to disappear. Caleb shifted awkwardly. That was a joke, he muttered. A joke? I said quietly. You humiliated me. Oh, come on, Dani, he said defensively. You're being dramatic again. Mom nodded quickly. Yes, sweetheart, it was just teasing. I looked at all three of them. The same people who had spent years telling me I was overreacting. Too sensitive. Too dramatic. But this time I had proof. You're right, I said. It was just a joke. I slipped my phone back into my purse, then added calmly, that's why I sent it to the family group chat. Mom's head snapped up. You did what? Dad's face drained of color. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm serious. Caleb stared at me. You sent that to the family? Yep. Which family group? I smiled. All of them. And that's when my phone started buzzing. Over and over and over and over. I pulled it out. Messages poured in faster than I could read them. Cousin Tyler. Wait, Caleb used Dani's money for this? Aunt Susan? Is this real? Uncle Mark? Harper family drama again. Then another message appeared. Grandma, Louise, Walter, explain yourself. Dad closed his eyes. Mom looked like she might faint. You've embarrassed this entire family, she whispered. I tilted my head slightly. No, I said calmly. You did. I left the grocery store without another word, but the fallout started immediately. By the time I got home, my phone had 30 missed calls. Mostly from Mom, several from Dad, 2 from Caleb, and at least a dozen messages from extended relatives. Apparently, the video had spread through the family like wildfire. For years, my parents had told everyone a carefully polished story. That Caleb was a brilliant entrepreneur. That I was just the quiet daughter living in the city. No one knew I had been quietly helping them financially. No one knew about the loans, the car payments, the emergency transfers. Until now. Now everyone knew. The next evening, someone knocked on my front door. I already knew who it was. When I opened it, Mom stood there with Dad and Caleb behind her. Mom crossed her arms immediately. This stunt was completely unnecessary. I leaned against the doorframe. What stunt? You humiliating your brother like that? Caleb held up a plastic grocery bag. Peace offering, he muttered. Inside was a 6-pack of beer. I stared at it. You're apologizing with beer? He shrugged. What do you want from me? Dad cleared his throat. Caleb has something he'd like to say. Caleb looked down at his shoes. Yeah, sorry about the money thing. That's it? I asked. He looked up. What else do you want me to say? Mom jumped in quickly. See? He apologized. I stared at them. 3 people standing on my porch. Not because they were sorry, but because they were exposed. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to fix it. I don't need your apology, I said. Mom's expression hardened. So what now? You just cut your family off. I smiled slightly. No, I just put things in the right order. Then I stepped back inside and closed the door. I didn't slam it. I didn't yell. I simply locked it and walked away. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what came next. And neither were they. But they probably should have been. Because 3 months later, everything in my life would look completely different, and the people who thought they could use me forever were about to learn what life looked like without me. 3 months can change a lot. Not slowly, not quietly, but completely. 3 months after that night on my porch, my life looked nothing like it used to. And the strange part? The change didn't start with revenge. It started with peace. The first night in my new house felt surreal. The place wasn't big, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a tiny kitchen with slightly outdated cabinets, but it was mine. No one else had keys. No one could guilt me into giving up my savings. No one could call me dramatic for wanting respect. I remember standing in the living room surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and thinking something I'd never thought before. I don't owe anyone anything. That realization felt like taking a full breath after years of breathing through a straw. A week after moving in, the paperwork for my grandfather's trust was finalized. Seeing the numbers on the screen still felt unreal. $342,781.46. That was the exact balance after taxes and fees. For years, I had lived like every dollar mattered. And suddenly, I had a financial cushion bigger than anything I'd ever imagined. But the funny thing was, I didn't go on a shopping spree. I didn't buy a fancy car. I didn't take some luxury vacation. Instead, I sat down with a financial planner. Because the one thing my parents accidentally taught me was this: money disappears quickly when you treat it like it will always be there. Around that same time, something unexpected happened at work. The rehabilitation clinic where I worked had been struggling. The owner, Dr. Patel, was considering expanding, but didn't have the capital. One afternoon, he called me into his office. "I've been thinking about opening a second location," he said. "That's amazing," I replied. He sighed. "It would be if I could afford it." Then he looked at me carefully. "You're one of the best assistants I've ever worked with, Dani." I blinked. "Thank you. What if," he continued slowly, "you became a partner?" My brain froze. A partner? You'd invest in the expansion. I'd handle operations. I leaned back in my chair, stunned. Just a few months earlier, I barely had enough savings left to buy a small house. Now I was being offered a chance to help build a business. And for the first time in my life, I had the freedom to say yes. The next 2 months were a blur of planning. Leases, renovations, hiring staff. I invested part of the trust fund into the new clinic location. Nothing reckless. Just enough to make the expansion possible. We opened the second clinic in early spring. And it worked. Within weeks, we were booked solid. Patients kept coming. Word spread quickly. Before long, I wasn't just an assistant anymore. I was co-owner of a growing business. Sometimes I would sit in my office after closing and think about how different my life had become. 3 months earlier, I had been crying on my kitchen floor because my family betrayed me. Now I was building something that belonged entirely to me. While my life was improving, things back home weren't going so well. I didn't hear it directly from my parents. But small towns talk, and my cousin Tyler loved gossip. Apparently, Caleb's investment weekend didn't lead to any great financial breakthrough. Shocking. Instead, he lost most of the money. The rest went to credit card bills from Miami. Meanwhile, my dad's hours at the equipment company were cut. Crop prices dropped again, and the mortgage payment they never made was still unpaid. By the time the bank sent the second warning notice, everyone in the family already knew about the video, which meant no one believed their excuses anymore. For years, my parents had told everyone they were financially stable, responsible, hardworking, but the truth was starting to leak out. And once a story like that gets out in a small town, it spreads fast. The call finally came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I recognized Mom's number immediately. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. "Hello?" Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. "Dani, sweetheart." I stayed silent. "We're in trouble." Of course they were. "The bank is threatening foreclosure," she continued. My stomach tightened. Even after everything, hearing those words still hurt. The farm wasn't just their home, it was my childhood, my memories, my grandfather's land. But then another memory surfaced. The video. Caleb laughing. To dumb money. What do you want me to do? I asked quietly. Mom sniffled. You're doing well now, right? I didn't answer. We just need help getting caught up, she said quickly. Just this once. Just this once. The same words they had used every time before. I leaned back in my chair. How much? There was a pause. About 30,000. 30,000. 3 times the money they had already taken. And probably not the last time. My chest felt heavy, but something inside me had changed. I can't help you, I said calmly. Silence filled the line. Then Mom whispered, but we're your parents. I closed my eyes. I know. You can't just let us lose everything. I thought about the trust my grandfather left me, the clinic we were building, the house that finally felt like home, the boundaries I had fought so hard to create. Then I thought about Caleb and Miami and the laughter in that video. You should ask Caleb, I said softly. What? Maybe he has another investment opportunity? Her voice broke. Dani, please. But I had already made my decision. I hope things work out, I said. Then I hung up. I expected to feel guilty. I expected to feel cruel. But instead, I felt something else. Relief. Not because my parents were suffering, but because for the first time in my life, their problems weren't automatically mine. And that was the moment I truly understood something important. Helping people isn't kindness if they only see you as a tool. But the story wasn't quite over yet. Because a few weeks later, something happened that would bring everything full circle. And the final chapter of my relationship with my family would be decided once and for all. About a month after my mom's last phone call, I heard the news. Not from my parents, from my cousin Tyler. He sent a single text while I was finishing paperwork at the clinic. Tyler, hey, the farm sold today. I stared at the message for a long time. Even though I had expected it, the words still hit harder than I thought they would. The farm was gone. Just like that. 3 generations of family history, sold to a developer who planned to turn the land into a row of new suburban homes. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. Memories flooded my mind, running through the wheat fields as a kid. My grandfather teaching me how to fix the old tractor. Summer evenings on the porch while the sun disappeared behind the hills. All of it, gone. And the strange part, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. Because deep down, I had realized something a long time ago. The farm didn't disappear because I refused to save it. It disappeared because my parents stopped protecting it a long time ago. A few weeks after the farm was sold, I happened to drive through Pendleton for work. One of our clinics had started partnering with a sports therapy center nearby. I hadn't planned to visit the old property, but something pulled me down that familiar country road. When I reached the hill overlooking the land, I slowed the car. The red barn was still there, but the wheat fields had already been marked with construction stakes. Bright orange flags lined the property. Bulldozers sat parked near the edge of the field, waiting. The farmhouse looked smaller than I remembered, older, tired. And that's when I noticed a moving truck in the driveway. My parents were outside loading boxes. For a moment, I considered driving away. But instead, I parked. When I stepped out of the car, my mom noticed me first. Her shoulders stiffened. Dani, Dad turned slowly. Caleb stood behind them near the truck. He looked thinner. More tired than I remembered. For a moment, no one spoke. The wind moved gently through the empty fields. Finally, Mom said quietly, "So, you heard." "Yes." She glanced back at the house. "They close next week." I nodded. Dad cleared his throat. "We're moving into a smaller place in town." I didn't ask where. Caleb kicked a rock on the driveway. He wouldn't look at me. For a while, we just stood there in silence. Then Mom said something I didn't expect. "You could have helped us." Her voice wasn't angry. Just tired. I looked around the property one last time, then back at her. "I already did." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "The $12,000. Mom's eyes dropped to the ground. No one argued, because there was nothing left to say. Just as I turned to leave, Caleb spoke up. Dani. I stalked. He walked toward me slowly. For the first time in my life, my older brother looked uncertain. I messed up, he said. I waited. I thought I could fix everything, he continued. I thought if I hit it big, it would prove everyone wrong. His voice cracked slightly, but I didn't. I studied his face. For years, Caleb had been the confident one, the dreamer, the golden child. Now he just looked human. I know, I said. He swallowed. I shouldn't have taken the money. No, I agreed. You shouldn't have. Another long silence passed. Then he said quietly, I'm sorry. I believed him this time. But something important had changed. His apology didn't feel like something I needed anymore. I hope things work out for you, I said gently. Then I got back into my car. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. The farmhouse grew smaller and smaller, until eventually it disappeared behind a hill. And strangely, instead of sadness, I felt something else. Freedom. Because that place had stopped being my home long before the bank ever took it. Home wasn't a piece of land. It wasn't a barn or a wheat field. Home was where you were respected, where you were valued, where you weren't treated like an emergency fund. 6 months after the farm sold, my life looked completely different. The second clinic location was thriving. We had hired 2 more therapists and expanded our rehabilitation programs. Patients came from 3 different towns now. My little cottage finally felt like a real home. I planted a small garden in the backyard, adopted a rescue dog named Milo, and for the first time in my life, my evenings were peaceful. No emergency phone calls, no guilt, no family drama, just quiet. Sometimes I would drive past the old farm. Construction had already begun. Rows of new houses were rising where the wheat fields used to be. Kids' bikes leaned against driveways. Swing sets stood in backyards. New families were building new memories there. And strangely, that didn't make me sad. Because the past had already done its job. It had shaped me. It had taught me who I was. And more importantly, it had taught me who I didn't have to be anymore. Looking back now, I realize something important. Family doesn't mean sacrificing yourself forever. It doesn't mean letting people use your kindness as a safety net. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is step away, create boundaries, and build a life where you are valued for more than what you can give. I didn't lose my family. I just stopped being their solution. And in doing that, I finally gave myself the chance to become something else. Someone stronger, someone independent, someone free. Before we finish, make sure you subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments, what would you have done in Dani's situation? Would you have helped your parents again, or walked away like she did?